The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Metalsa. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The name Metalsa and all forms and abbreviations are the property of their owner, and their use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. Welcome everyone to One Voice Without Labels, Metalsa's new space from and for the people, where we propose to put diversity issues on the table, open dialogues and provoke conversations about that little or nothing have been addressed open for these things, but we propose to do it, as the name of the program says, without labels. That means respecting the diversity that makes us all unique beings, but embracing it for our enrichment as what we all are, human beings. It's not about dividing, this is about uniting. I introduce myself to you. I'm Fraser McMahon. I'm a member of the Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Committee at Metalsa, but I'm not alone. Fortunately, I'm never alone. Isn't that true, Heather?
Well, I would say that that's definitely, most certainly true. You are not alone. My name is Heather Beach. I am the Talent Attraction Global Lead for Metalsa. And since we are here closing with Pride Month, this chapter will be dedicated to some of the topics related to LGBTQIA2S+ community, which will refer throughout the rest of the podcast as LGBTQ+. Today we have some very special guests. We have Brianna, we have Brian, and we have Madeline, which we're very excited to have all of them here. So thank you so much for joining us. And for those of you that are listening and watching us, feel free in the comment section below to tell us what your name is, what you do, and how you relate to the LGBTQ+ community. So of course, we'd like to kick it off with a few of you. If you'd like to introduce yourself, please feel free to do so and explain if you feel like, in a way, how you are an activist for human rights of the LGBTQ+ community. Madeline, do you want to kick us off?
Okay, hi. My name is Madeline Poyer. I am the Talent Acquisition Specialist in Elizabethtown at Metalsa. The way that I think I'm an activist for the LGBT+ community is a little bit difficult to answer, because I just would say that I live my life every day, no different than anyone else. Kind of just the same as everyone. Yeah, I don't know.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Madeline, for introducing yourself. Brianna, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself to the community as well.
Yeah, I'll go. My name is Brianna Pruitt. I identify as gay, or I guess lesbian would be the proper term. I'm a cisgendered woman. So yeah, I am actually, I would say that I'm a pretty big activist and/or like Madeline said, I kind of just live my life daily. But on a professional side too, I am a therapist. And so I work probably, I would say 60 to 70% of my clients identify as LGBTQ+. I serve a lot of the trans population. Probably a solid fraction of that is identify as trans as well. And so a lot of what I do daily is, giving those people a voice and a safe space that they often do not get. I guess other ways are, the willingness for me to engage in certain uncomfortable conversations that I'm pretty comfortable with having with people who think and believe differently than I do, and that's okay. And, meeting that from a human perspective and meeting them on a human level. So yeah, and then of course other, community types of things that I do, but that's not always the thing that makes the difference, although it's good to go out and be a part of Pride and do things like that. It's more the one-on-one conversations where we really get to have that impact.
Awesome. Thank you
Okay.
for.
I guess it's my turn. I'm Brian Gatewood. I believe I'm the oldest member on this panel. I am a family court judge in Louisville, Kentucky. I came out as gay on October 13th, 1993. So I've been out for just a little while. I was a senior in college. It was a very different time. I didn't know any gay people. I just knew who I was. And in terms of being an activist, I walked into law school the next fall as an openly gay man, and it was the first time that I had ever presented myself. I was the only openly gay person in my law class. I left law school as an openly gay attorney in Louisville, Kentucky, which again, times have changed a lot since then. I became involved with what was called the Fairness Campaign in Louisville, which was the group that was responsible for passing our non-discrimination law that we have had now for, I believe, over 25 years. Louisville is a fairly progressive city for the South. We were one of the first cities in the South to have a non-discrimination ordinance that included gay and lesbian people. We beat Atlanta. And in fact, ours was the first in the South to include transgender people all those years ago. And I helped draft that legislation. I went on to practice law. I became a guardian ad litem for abused and neglected children in the family court system in Louisville. I was the first openly gay attorney to do that. You know, there's some stigma around gay men being around children, but I was always very open about who I was, and I was well regarded in that capacity. And so a couple of years ago, I became the first openly gay appointed family court judge appointed by the governor of Kentucky. There have been gay judges, but they have never been out. They've always hidden. I've never hidden. And my husband and I have been together for 22 years. And I suppose you could say we are activists in that we are an openly gay couple who has 3 adopted children that we're raising. So I have lived my life in a way that people can see who I am, because that's what I want, because I think that that's how the world changes. When people encounter gay and lesbian people and trans people and all the others. And the acronym has changed several times since I've come out, so I have a hard time keeping up with it. I guess I sound like my grandmother all of a sudden. But that's the way we make a difference, is to live our lives openly and as who we are. And I have made a difference. So that's who I am.
Great introductions. Thank you very much for all introducing yourselves. And, you know, each of you seem very open about your individual situations, which is great. But there's a lot of taboos in the working environment, and maybe it's because, you know, people are ignorant, or they don't want to seem ignorant, or they don't want to offend anybody, or you know, generally maybe they just don't even know how to approach the subject of addressing it with people. You know, based on that, you know, what's your opinions? Why do you think it's still taboo to talk about the topic of sexual orientation and, you know, or gender expression, you know, in the workplace? What do you think is really driving that from your perspectives? And you're all from very different fields.
Me, and I go. And I don't mean to drag us down a political road, but I think that I think we are unfortunately living in a time where there's a real movement to sort of make it taboo and more taboo and push us back in the closet, for lack of a better phrase. You know, these and I'll mention Florida, these laws that make it illegal to talk about sexual orientation in schools, and the drive to boycott stores that have pride displays. That's part of an effort by the segment of society that has never accepted who we are. You know, we can kind of go along in our happy lives and we feel like maybe we're making some progress, and maybe within our little sphere we are. But then you look at the broader picture, and there are those who are, I think, still determined to push back. And you know, that whole piece of the law about not discussing sexual orientation in schools. Well, what that means is that if my two daughters are in school and they're working on Mother's Day presents for their parents, which they always do, and my kids don't have a mother. So if the teacher wants to talk about, well, that's okay because some people have two dads and all families look different. Well, the purpose of that law is to make it so the teacher can't talk about that, to make us invisible again. Now, I don't think it will work, but that's really an effort to re-stigmatize. I think if you back them into a corner, that's what they would admit they were trying to do. So, I mean, I think that's part of the piece of why it's still taboo, because some people want it to be taboo.
On that, I would say personally, working in the field in which we do, in manufacturing, I don't want to say that it's a boys' club, but sometimes it does feel like a boys' club. With that, it comes with the nature of manufacturing, especially in Kentucky. I would say we're still kind of in the don't ask, don't tell era here. But that definitely makes it hard to come out or to talk about it or to be open. I know my team is very different when it comes to that. I do have a very supportive team that I work with, and I hope they feel the same way about me being supportive towards them. But automotive in its totality, I would say it's definitely difficult and taboo.
I think I would add that more of an addendum to what Brian is saying is that because of all these laws, bills, things that are being passed and or attempted to be passed, we have access to every kind of everything that is even being written. So, you know, the social media world that we currently live in, you know, I mean, I saw like 3 or 4 days ago, a map of the United States, and the states were colored different colors, and there was a range of attempted bills to be passed against LGBTQ people, and it was like 0 to 10, and that was a certain color. 10 to 30 was a certain color, and like that information as a gay person is prevalent to me, like without even me trying to search it. It's like, oh, just a friend posted that on her story. Now I see that. Now I'm prevalent. Now I'm aware of all these anti-LGBTQ things that are happening without even actively trying to figure that out. And so you have all this information available to you at all times. I mean, especially again, working with the LGBTQ community in such an intimate way that I do. I mean, I have people that are like, my parents are supportive, my friends are supportive, like they would never judge me, they would never but there's this huge mass shame and fear, and it's like, you know, things that come up in conversation, it is a lot of, well, you see this person and this story that happened, and you hear about the one person that came out, and we see the worst of, you know, people that were displayed as their identity or shamed for that, or something that happened, or, you know, comments on some drag queen's post, and you can just click on any page really that's anyone famous LGBTQ identifying, and you can find hate. Like, it's just there. It's at every corner you want to look. And so yes, the good also exists, but we don't always remember that, right? We think back to our lives, and again, working in the field of trauma, what I remember as a kid is the one comment or the one thing that someone called me, right? The name that someone in like 3rd grade called you, that sticks with you. That's what stays. And so that's what we see all the time, and that's what sticks.
Yeah. I mean, great, you know, make some really great points there. And you know, if I could just ask a follow-up question for that comes from this dialogue is, you know, obviously there's some big macro level, problems going on, and issues to be resolved. But Madeline, something you mentioned there really struck with me is, at a smaller level, within your team, it works, and it sounds like you have a good dynamic, and you're able to do that. What advice would you give us from a company point of view, in terms for what could Metalsa do, and what could our DEI committee do, to try and, on a, you've been talking about the macro level issues, but we've boil it down to a micro level thing. What is it, something that the people in the company can do on a daily basis to really help and break those taboos in small groups, and maybe those small groups become bigger over time?
I would say the best thing you can do is treat somebody the same way as you would want to be treated, no matter what their background is, no matter what their sexual orientation is, their identity. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all people, and we're all just trying to do the same thing. And if you treat everyone that way, no matter what, I mean, it helps. With my team, I mean, I'm treated no different than anyone else. So it just works. They may know that I am a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but that doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, I'm a person, I'm a human.
Well, you asked micro. So when I think of micro level, a couple things come to mind. One being, okay, you're a new person to the company, you're filling out paperwork, you're doing stuff like this. Something as simple as offering a section for like preferred pronouns. That is something really simple that just shows that we have thought about this. We have given this, awareness, and that we're making space for you to, and maybe you're not comfortable yet, right? There's a lot of people that aren't going to be, just because there's that they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to put they, them. However, that shows that it has been considered and like thought of. That's something really small. I even think, again, this is, I think, a very therapeutic approach. So this is the way my brain works naturally at this point. But language is the biggest thing. Yes, I can just, as a fellow whatever person, I can just go and be myself. And obviously I have when Brian talks about it, I feel pretty similarly to, like, I don't know what it is in me that I've always been very proud to be whatever I am, however I am. It's always been that way. And I do trace that back a lot to my family. And I'm fortunate to have had that. However, there are plenty of people that have that support, and it's still this, like I said, this really big shameful thing. And so micro things, I think of language, like even if you are married to you're in a heterosexual relationship and you say my partner instead of my husband, or you say my partner instead of my wife, simple things like that are like a really great way to just show that there doesn't have to be, certain whatever. I remember a job I had. I used to be a bartender, and I'm not now, but I was previously engaged, and I had my engagement ring on. And I remember they said, somebody had come up to me and said, oh, are you married? Or are you engaged? And I said, I'm engaged. And they were like, oh, what is their, or what do they do? Or what's their name, or something like that. But they didn't gender, they didn't assume. And obviously to a person that is gay, I was like, how freaking cool that you didn't say what's his name, or what is, whatever, because I'm going to make note of that. Maybe not to, like, someone who is hetero is going to just be like, oh, whatever, and it's not going to be a big deal. But if they are, then that's immediately going to be very, very obvious to them. So just that, like, that type of language, and not making those assumptions, or things with like family, like not assuming there has to be like a one way, like you have to have one partner even, or that you have to have I don't know, just the plethora of assumptions that we look at, like people in a relationship, oh, it's one this and one that, and they have kids and they do this, all the right normal what we call normal things that families do. So just using the language that supports like someone to fill in their own answer.
Favorite things to do, because I'm relatively tech savvy, is to go in and change the state forms so that they line up with my family and then turn them in. I enjoy doing that to them. But she's right. They just seeing it on a form, seeing in a form that accommodates you. And again, that's part of the, if you look at that's part of these legislative efforts is to make it so you can't address us in the way that we want to be addressed, and the idea behind that is to stigmatize us. There's a subset that thinks we have to keep stigmatizing, as if that's going to make us go away. It's not. It's just, best I can tell, it's just to try to make people miserable. But those are my thoughts.
Sorry, I'll only say one more thing. But I used to work during graduate school, I went to graduate school at EKU, so Eastern Kentucky, very rural area and predominantly Republican, swinging that side. So I, again, like Brian, I'm proud of who I am. I don't need to ease my way in. I'm kind of that way just by nature. So very open at that job. I worked in the child development center, so with 4 or 5-year-olds and their families. So a lot of like small children that maybe I'm dressed more masculine one day, or maybe have tattoos and piercings, and like they have certain questions or judgments, or there's certain assumptions being made about me, right? All these things. And I basically did a lot of their paperwork stuff. And just like Brian is saying, seeing certain language that's like mother's name, father's name, like and everyone was fortunately very accepting and loved me and knew that I was an open book. So I was fortunate to have that environment. But I was like, listen, this paperwork is trash. This is terrible. And I told them that, and they of course laughed at me, and they were like, oh my gosh, fix it all, do it all. So, I edited freely because I was just that passionate. I was like, I don't have to redo all these documents, but I did. I redid all the documents to be like, parent, potential other parent, like there could be 5 parents. There could be, everyone could be remarried and have different whatever. And so, and using like spouse or partner or, significant other, and not assuming everyone has to be married to have a child together, just stuff like that. That's like all the language, it was and they had no clue. They didn't mean that at all. Again, and I know that from my boss, who I very well got to know. I knew 100% no intention behind hurting me, but her brain was not at all that way. It was just like, oh wow, of course, this has never in my life affected me. I've never, ever questioned this. And so why would I just magically question it? Like I was like the first person in her life ever, and she's, 20 years older than me, that she's known that's gay, like personally. And that's even crazy to me. And so sometimes it's just, again, with Brian, who's proud and out there, like I can't even imagine how many lives with all the stuff that you've done just by being so confident that you've impacted. And I feel that way about me as a therapist. Like I will tell people, because I think when I'm like very knowledgeable about LGBTQ and I say I work with LGBTQ, they all want to be like, are you LGBTQ, or you just like work with them? And so I'll say I'm an openly identifying LGBTQ person. I'm not going to hide that. You don't have to question if I have experience. Like I live this, so it's not some secret. And that, I don't know, at this point I'm on a tangent, but yeah.
Great, thank you very much. I think you're giving us a lot to work on there with those answers. So I think there's some things we can take from that, definitely. Thank you.
Agreed. I'm really curious though, while we're on the topic, I know that we've talked about work environments. I'd really like to get your take on, from each of you. I know you're working in very different dynamics, different environments. Maybe some are large corporations, maybe something is a little bit smaller, kind of office style. But what would you say to those that maybe are currently working at a company and have not come out to the company? Maybe they're out personally, but not professionally. what advice would you give them, or what would you say to them?
Start small.
Start small.
Start small. I mean, if you're uncomfortable and you really don't know who you can come out to, if you're not comfortable with coming out, like me, I started with you, Heather, and then I moved my way around. So definitely start small, gauge how you feel, because that is something for you to own. You coming out is totally that is your decision. That's your baby. You do it when you're ready.
That's great advice. Thank you.
I think it depends on where you work and how badly you need the job too. If you work at Hobby Lobby and you have to have that job, then you have to be careful. We just still live in a time when you have to be careful. Now, and where you live. If you work at Hobby Lobby in Louisville has a non-discrimination ordinance. So I think those are factors that you want to weigh. And also weighing the people around you. If you need this job and there's someone who's going to make your life miserable, if they know you're gay or lesbian or trans, or then you might wait till you have a new job. I mean, you just really have to look around you and assess your surroundings.
I think going off of the language perspective is that a way that you can very subtly, start small, is using the language yourself. And not that it's fun to do this, but kind of assess what is their reaction to saying they, them to everyone and everything, or what is their reaction to saying me and my partner, or me and my spouse, or whatever. And even with friends, I'll talk about friends and I'll be like, yeah, they this, they that, because there doesn't have to be assumptions on what everybody's gender is and what my relationship is, right? We want to, again, back to the social media world, know every detail about everyone. And I can talk about things neutrally and it be, just as impactful in getting my point across. And, how does someone respond to me using that language? Or do they have a look on their face? Or do they pester me and start to ask different questions to try to get something out of me? It's like an energy that if you're in touch with about yourself, I think you can really easily pick up on with others.
Okay. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm hearing a theme here about being surrounded by people that are supportive overall. So I feel like, of course, the next question that I'm going to ask is going to end up being about allies, if you don't mind. But how would you suggest that someone could be an ally, given maybe that people don't know already how to be an ally for the LGBTQ plus community? What would your advice be to them? How can they be an ally for that community and the people maybe at the office space?
I go back to language being one. Another really simple way, and this is just something small. You can take anything that has a rainbow on it, and or a pride flag sticker, a mini little pride flag, other flags. It doesn't have to be just this one, but just showing this is something small that I am not doing anything by putting this sticker on my water bottle and carrying it around, and it's no big deal, but I'm just showing that this is a small signal that you are safe with me. Again, it's going to be something that to every other people, they're going to think nothing of it. But if that person is LGBTQ identifying, they're going to be like, hey, did you see her water bottle? And it's going to be a very easy invitation of I feel at ease around you.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I was at a conference not too long ago, and they had a diversity and inclusion piece, and it was a conference for judges. But one of the things that you can do, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to, is even if just somewhere on my bench, if I have a rainbow sticker or a little flag, doesn't matter how small it is, it sends a signal that people see. And the people who don't like it won't necessarily know what it means anyway. But it sends a signal. And my son goes to a really good private school in Louisville, and I've been into that school, and there are rainbow stickers and signs everywhere and on the teacher's desk, letting the kids know it's safe. And that lets litigants will let litigants in my court know this is a safe space. He's not gonna judge. He's a bald white guy, but he's not gonna judge me because I happen to be in a lesbian relationship or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think that too, which I didn't do today, and now I'm gonna shame myself for it. But like when you get on something like this, like a Zoom call, you can always put like next to your shown name, like your pronouns, again, showing that, hey, I might be a cisgendered white woman or a white bald dude, but I am considering that this is mine and it may not be what your pronouns are, and that's okay, because I'm gonna put mine so that you know that you can have your own too.
You can even wear a shirt with a big pink triangle on it, and sometimes people get the message. So,
or with a pride shirt. Maybe I was going to say, Madeline and I have our pride shirts on today. Probably stands out a little bit more than an inconspicuous little flag, but whatever gets the message across.
Absolutely. And Brianna, I would say you had a lot of good points about not assuming that everyone is like you. I think if someone is in a space where they want to think, how can I be a better ally? They should check their own bias. We all have biases, and we all, even if they're subconscious, we have them. And for someone just to sit down and think about, what theirs might be towards LGBT, towards really any group of people, would definitely help them understand how they can be a better ally by reteaching themselves different ways to think about things.
My professional experience. But I would add, if you are feeling very unease to potentially come out in the workplace, and or if you're feeling questionable about how to be an ally or anything like this, there's some really big questions there that, again, this is my background, but go to therapy. Just talk about it. Have somewhere that is first of all, legally I can't share, outside of these walls, what you and I talk about. So it's inherently a safe space in that way. But B, hopefully you're going to find a therapist that you genuinely connect with too. And I think that's the thing, that there is this, again, stigma exists around a lot of things still. Mental health is one. And you don't have to have some mental illness or, have some big breakup or big loss to go to therapy and just be like, I feel really awkward about these things, and they're pretty out there in the world. Let me work through, why am I so awkward? Why am I so shameful to share this? Why am I overthinking this? I'm having anxiety thinking of how can I be an ally, because I am. That's I think a normal thing that a lot of probably heterosexual and or cisgender people have. And just that awkwardness is going to make us feel awkward. So just figure that out. Go to therapy, figure it out, talk with someone else. It doesn't have to be, professional space, but just have the open conversation of hey, this is really weird for me. I've never known someone that's gay. I don't want to offend you, but I do want to learn. And if that person is Brian or I, we're going to tell you all about it. So.
Yeah, great. Just to flip the script on that for a moment. So, you gave some good ideas there of things, where straight people can be an ally to, whatever, to this LGBTQ community. If I just flip that over the other way and say, for those members of the LGBTQ community that are already in our company and are there, what are the kind of things that they can do to bring in, to bring more people over to their side of thinking? I like some of the ideas on the other way. What is there something to come, from in the other direction?
I think again, the best long-term strategy or weapon, whatever phrase you want to use, is living your life in an open way so that people see you. Because a big part of the puzzle is fear of the unknown. These people who are most of the people who are the most homophobic or afraid of this change don't know gay people. Some of them do. Some people are just mean-spirited. We just gotta accept that and move on. But most of the people who are not okay yet, it's for lack of experience. So providing that experience to those people in a comfortable way, I think is the best thing we can do. You know, if somebody doesn't know that you're gay at first and they get to be your friend and they like you, and then they find out, it's kind of like springing a trap. It's like, well, wait a minute, I like that. And there's less and less of that these days because most people know gay people, but there are still some who don't. So, you know, I think that's a piece of the puzzle.
I do think that's important. Definitely just living your truth, being open for sure, and just being a genuinely good person. I mean, people automatically see that. That might look good, but at the end of the day, I also feel like it's not so much our responsibility to make people accept us. If they don't, I personally don't want to spend that much time on somebody who's mean to me. I don't.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like, yes. Well, actually, I really liked Brian's answer because my first thought was like, you want me to bring someone to my side? Like, I'm not gonna educate. Like this is not my responsibility to educate you. But yes, I do think Brian's point being just like, yeah, the best thing I could do is just be me, be open and see that it's very normal and that I don't have to hide away and da 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 da. But yeah, I think on the other side, I don't need to do convincing. I can if I'm willing. I can if I want to. And that's where I think I've transitioned more. Is like I could totally have a conversation now, being a little older, with someone who is anti-LGBT or throwing religion or Trump or whatever down my throat. Like I could totally have that conversation now and be calm and be whatever, and you know, try to have that conversation as productively as I could. Do I have to? No. Is it going to change based on every day? Like maybe one day I'm feeling up to that, maybe one day I'm not. So it's definitely not my responsibility. And yeah, as a company, I would say that, like, educate yourselves or throw in it like stuff like you're doing a diversity initiative or a training, something that's just saying this is what we're open to as a company, not just as, you know, like we're going to enforce this as a company and not just as on an individual basis.
Being part of this group, I think a couple of you mentioned how some people maybe are surprised all of a sudden they see you in a different light all of a sudden because they find out you're part of this community. It's not your complete identity. It's a part of who you are. What advice would you give to someone else that's part of this group but maybe struggling with that? Is it something that you feel like is a bigger part of your identity, or is it just a small part?
I think that it's not necessarily any bigger than it is for a heterosexual person, except that the time that we live in makes it bigger, I think. I think because we spend so much of our energy fighting for acceptance, it becomes more of a focal point of our life. You know, and an example would be the extra steps we've had to take. You know, when my husband and I first began adopting children, we couldn't, in Kentucky, we couldn't be married at that time. And because we weren't married, we couldn't both adopt our kids. So one of us had to adopt first. It was me because I was younger and because at the time my family was more accepting. So if something happened to me, I knew that my family would not give my husband any trouble in terms of custody of the kids and that sort of thing. And then when the law changed, we went back in and did a second parent adoption. So we've had to take steps because of our sexual orientation that makes it more of a focal point. But by the same token, it isn't any more of my life than it is my brother who's heterosexual. I'm made up of so many other things. I was a lawyer. I'm a family court judge. We have a farm. you know what, I have all these things that make up who I am.
Brian, I would totally agree with you there that it is the extra steps, because at the end of the day, I don't think any of us want to be treated any different than a straight couple would. I think we want it to be normal. We want it to be not stigmatized. So the extra steps definitely is what make it such a big deal, especially with the way politically we are now in the US, the way that social media is going, the amount of hate that we're seeing. That's why we have to bring light to it. Otherwise, we will just kind of be left in the dark.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it takes up any more room. Like, obviously for me, I don't have to think about it. It's like, you don't have to think about, oh, I'm straight. Remember that I'm attracted to guys. Okay. Like, I don't think about it. And so, no, in that way, I guess similar to what Brian's saying, I have to be really conscious all the time, and that I don't have to be, but it just kind of happens. If I'm holding my partner's hand in public, someone who could look at me and be like, oh, that's so great, but if they're looking at me, I have to question whether it's like acceptance or judgment. And I've started to do this thing where I just assume everyone is like, oh, so happy for you, and that helps my own mental peace, whether that is the case or not. So that's something I do, but I wouldn't have to do, like, it's kind of like Brian said, it kind of gets thrown in your face in ways of, if a straight woman is holding her husband's hand in public, then there's just never any hesitation, thought, like, you don't have to wonder. So I think it sometimes gets heavy, knowing that sometimes you'll never really know, but with others, they don't have to even think that or wonder.
Just kind of, following on a little bit with regards to coming out, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with that coming out at work? We talked a little bit about it, but is there a big piece of advice that you would give?
Make sure. I was very lucky, but I would say to young people, make sure you can accurately gauge how the people that love you and particularly support you are going to react. Because there are a lot of kids who, and it's the same story over and over again, they tell their parents and their parents throw them out. And I think that's less common, but still, I live in a state with plenty of Southern Baptists, and they'll throw their kids out. And, if you're depending on your parents to get you to college, then I think that you need to gauge who you safely talk to until you're able to take care of yourself. And if you need to have a friend that you trust rather than your parents because you're afraid your parents won't be accepting, I think the crux of that answer is gauge your safety.
Like I said, we kind of answered this before, but gauging, using the language, neutral language, my partner, they, them, and assessing little by little what energy or comfort you get from that or response you get from that. And then if you're comfortable, and if you're willing to and prepared to like make a bigger decision if something were to go wrong, then go for it. I don't know. There's not really an easy way to answer that question.
No, there's not. I would just go back to pretty much what I said of it's more like finding your work family that's not your family at home. So that's I've talked about my team. That's what my team is. When I was living with my parents, I was not able to come out whether it be for my own safety, whether it be for just acceptance, or really just not wanting to hear it. So I wasn't able to do that. With my sister I could, but not my parents, not the adults in my family. It wasn't until I got my own place that I did tell one of my parents, and what I received was, no, you're not. So you do have to kind of gauge who you tell, what you do, and for me, that was finding my work family. So you get to pick your family now, apparently.
I think from a therapist perspective, I've had a lot of conversations with clients about this sort of thing. Like parents that they know aren't accepting, or there's this huge like decision to be made of like, do I come out and cut my parent off because this is so unbearable, or do I, like, our relationship's now real sucky, but essentially every single time I'm around them, I'm reminded of their disapproval. And I think the biggest thing that I always try to consider and lead with is when we take time away from, whether that's family, friends, whatever, we often think a decision like that has to be like forever or not. We think, oh, I'm going to cut mom off. When in reality, it can be like, I'm going to not talk to mom for now. And what does that space do? Does that freedom from that relationship make your life easier and or better? Or does that freedom from that relationship bring about its new issue? But we often think when we make decisions or when we come out or everything, it's like very certain, and it's really very fluid. And so I think that's more of a thing you have to adapt for yourself. But I always try to view everything in life as like an experiment. Like, I'm just collecting data. Okay, I don't talk to mom for 3 weeks. Did I feel better? Did I not? Oh, I felt better. Okay, I'm going to not talk to mom another 3 weeks. Okay, was this doable or was this not? And we're always collecting data, and you can always change your mind on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in following up with that, I've been very lucky, but my husband has a brother who is intolerant. And over the years, he's figured out that, less is better. We only interact with him when we have to. And because when he's around him, it's hurtful. He's hurtful. The brother goes out of the way to be hurtful. And so you have to make a decision as an adult. Okay, this relationship is not a good thing for me. And it's been very hard for my husband because he's very about his family. But he's come to realize it's not worth it. He's not worth it.
So
Great.
I feel like I was gonna say, Fraser, I feel like I'm hearing a theme here, a lot about mental health. And I know obviously every situation is unique, but I have to say, as an ally, it never gets any easier hearing these heartbreaking stories about, like, Brianna, what you said that your friend had heard, Madeline, that your parent wasn't as accepting, Brian, that you have someone, of course, in the family that you'd probably normally be able to have a relationship with, but it seems like they're not as supportive. If you don't mind me asking, mental health wise, what are some unique mental health challenges faced by people of the LGBTQ plus community?
Well, that's an easy one. Even in my day, at the time that I came out, the Department of Health and Human Services had done a study. They did it in the Clinton years. Gay and lesbian young people are 2 to 3 times more likely to kill themselves. And I believe they still are. And a piece of that is the depression and the stigmatization that young gay and lesbian and trans and others face. And so the mental health piece of it is, you have to learn to take care of yourself, and you have to build a community, like we have talked about, of people who make you feel supported, because that's a big piece of your mental health, is not feeling alone. That's always been my philosophy. In law school, I joined the gay and lesbian course, and that was the first time I had felt I walk into a room and everybody understands me and everybody supports me. And that made a big, big difference in my life. And so if you're a gay or lesbian, trans young person there are resources in the community. Find them.
Okay. How would you say that the workplace can support people's mental well-being? Obviously, we don't know, with some people not fully coming out, anyone could obviously have any other situation occurring at home or in their personal life other than being part of the LGBTQ plus community. What can workplaces do to support the employees' mental well-being?
I say it starts from the top. People want to feel comfortable where they're working. And right now, people who are a part of the LGBT plus community, especially those who are in the trans community, can't even have the jobs that they want to have. A trans person can't join the military if they want to. A gay or lesbian person or a trans person, it might be uncomfortable if they probably will be if the company that they work for donates to anti-gay organizations. I mean, it starts from the top and how the company itself represents themselves in the community. Then it can trickle down into supporting us in a more personal way.
We've got time for just a few more questions, so let's try and hit you with some final questions. You want to go first, Heather, there, and then I'll ask one. Maybe one. Enough time for one each.
Ooh, one more. Okay, let me see which one we have that would be really good.
Make it a doozy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said make it a doozy. Make it a good question.
Oh, make it a good one. Ooh, okay, so the pressure is on. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go with the one that I feel like honestly will probably help the most amount of people that potentially could be listening to today's podcast. Maybe it's themselves or someone around them. Obviously, going beyond Metalsa, we've talked a lot about how can we help the people within the company, those that are employees or even employees at other companies. It's not just them. They could have family members, someone they know that is also part of the LGBTQ plus community. To be a proper ally, how can they also involve themselves, or how can they get resources to those that may need it, or the support that they may need as being part of the LGBT plus community? What would you recommend for them for support? And I know this answer obviously could change based on the location that they're in, the country that they're in, but from your experience within Kentucky, what support or resources would you recommend?
So I know Brian had said earlier, with him living in Louisville, he does have those resources. Children or kids who are part of the community, they have those resources. Being from rural Kentucky, we don't quite have the same resources when you come from a town of like 3,000, I think, so it's a little bit different. So I think the resources starts in the schools. It starts with those teachers that have the flag on their desk, who are the safe space, and hopefully you become one of those people who are that safe space for others, even in the work environment.
I think just talk about it. Be like, if you are wanting to be an ally, talk about whatever. Be an open person yourself. And if you have issues with that, but yet are very, very adamant about wanting to be an ally, go to therapy, figure it out. Like, what's holding you back? What is so shameful in being open or making initiative and starting a conversation first? I think that is what I see more and more than anything. A lot of people have really, really great thoughts, ideas, and even like, I would approach the conversation like this, but it's the initiative. They can't get themselves to do it. So whatever that is that's holding you back, spend some time there. Ask yourself, like, okay, what family system, where is this feeling also coming from? Where's another time in my life where I was afraid to speak up? Okay, so maybe this is that little me that my parents didn't give me a voice speaking up. Well, right now, that's not me now. Now I'm here. Now I'm this adult who is educated and smart and capable, and I can do this now. And we don't do that. We don't get to know ourselves, and we don't ask really hard questions. And so then there's just shame around everything. And being an open book is very intimidating to a lot of people. So.
And I think the only thing I'll add is, and again, back to this, this don't say gay stuff. And they're trying to do it in Kentucky as well, to make it so you can't, what they're trying to do is take away the safe spaces in schools for kids. That's that's what they're trying to do, because they somehow in their minds, if kids don't have access to resources that talk about being different, then they won't be different. And of course that's incorrect. They'll just be miserable and maybe kill themselves. That's what they'll do. That's what the statistics are. So push back on those efforts to take away safe spaces. If I were a teacher,
where can the people go to get help for that? If they're feeling that way, you know, where are the places that they can go? You know, is there particular forums or, you know, groups, or, you know, even, you know, a online community where they can, you know, safely ask their questions?
The Trevor Project being one. Suicidal hotline. There's LGBTQ specific hotlines. There are several pride centers.
Yeah.
Search a pride center. Just show up. Like, just walk in. Google. I mean, shit. There's like endless information on Google. Just do it. And again, that goes back to the initiative. Have the initiative to look at something and then go and do it. Show up. And be uncomfortable.
It may be for, you know, the people that, you know, family members or someone that they see someone struggling with that, and they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to navigate it. Maybe they don't have the maturity or the confidence to do that. And so they sit and they stew in their own juices and you know, and maybe there's a bad outcome. So I think it's great that there are, you know, avenues and availabilities and things. We probably have to make those more free for people to have easy access to those kind of things. So, you know, in conclusion, you know, I said we had time for 2 questions. We actually only had time for 1. But, you know, to try and wrap this thing up, you know, maybe go around and say what's a positive message for you know, that each of you could give to members of the community that are listening to this you know, listening to this podcast and are wondering about things. You know, what's a positive thing that you could say?
My life is more rich and interesting than I ever thought it could be. And I've said this, I've had occasion in my life to talk to friends who were moms who were dealing with kids who were coming out, or young adults who were coming out and struggling with it. And one of the things that I've said to them is, you know, not on the day that I came out, but today, if you asked my mother if she would change anything, she would tell you no. Because her life has been so much more interesting and so much more rich because of who I am. She wouldn't change a thing, and I wouldn't change a thing. And so my advice is to hang tough and remember, you're the way you are for a reason. And it turns out fine.
I would ask the question to myself or anyone else. In what way have you yet to accept that being anyone other than who you are is what you're supposed to do? If you think being something, doing something, saying something other than what is like very authentic to you feels like what you should do, figure that out, whatever that is. Yeah, I think of the term authentic self a lot, and whatever feels that and you connect with when I say, like when you hear that term, that's what you should go do and figure out the means and support and necessary details to get there. And that's enough.
Okay.
My message to the people would just be, honestly to be yourself, and who cares what other people think about it. Honestly, that's all I got.
I like it. I like it. Message from me is that you all matter. Please remember that you matter. You matter to not only yourself, but those that are around you. That's a message not only for the community, but also those that are allies. Please remind those that you care about that they also matter. I think that reminder needs to be there. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us. I want to thank you for the openness and the trust in this new project. I'm Heather Beach.
And from my side, I'm Fraser McMahon, and before I say goodbye, and for this and the other diversity things that are around there, from a Metalsa point of view, that you can reach out to people internally within Metalsa. There's an email, dei.committee@metalsa.com, or you can contact directly to Manera, the DEI facilitator for this. So thank you very much to everybody for the open and candid conversations. It's been great. I think we covered a lot of ground over the time. So thank you very much, and good luck to anyone. And it's great to see that there is support there for people, and there's a really positive outlook going forward for this. So despite all the challenges. So thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
On behalf of Metalsa and One Voice No Labels podcast, we want to thank in a special way to Fraser McMahon, Heather Beach, Joseph A. Van Wansili, and Linda McLellan. Thanks to you, this project has begun its journey.